This is Alabama Politics with Steve Flowers, an in-depth interview with Alabama's top political newsmakers. Now, from the studios of Troy University, here is Steve Flowers.
I'm Steve Flowers, and welcome to Alabama Politics. Folks, we're fortunate tonight to have as our guest one of Montgomery's top personalities, a radio personality, Baron Coleman. Baron, good to have you with us.
Steve, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
It's been about a year, folks, since we had Baron on the show, and I respect Baron's opinion about Alabama politics as much as I do anybody's in the state, and enjoy being on he and Jack Campbell's radio show. It's tell our viewers how to listen to it, Baron, because I'm sure that a lot of them already are, because Ronnie and John were talking about it before we went on the air. They listen to it every day. And
people say that.
And I listen to it.
It's on News Talk 93.1 FM, WACV, 9 to 12 every single day, so Monday through Friday.
And this is fixing to go online so y'all can look and listen to it. I have people in other parts of the state, I'm not technically savvy, that if I tweet out I'm going to be on your show, they'll listen to it in Birmingham.
Yeah, we have an app. You can get on the WACV app. TuneIn Radio has an app. You can listen just directly from our website, newstalk931.com, and we track that. We track those online listeners, and we get them from all over the place. Not just Alabama. I mean, we get them from around the Southeast.
That's what I was thinking. And people who maybe have Montgomery ties or something like that.
I think most of the people listening that are from other places are from here, probably, or
that
at
have
least
ties to Montgomery.
Right. They just want to know what's going on, and they turn it on. And
because you spend a lot of the time being a local Montgomery radio station, y'all will talk about Montgomery politics a lot.
We probably split it up 50-50 over the course of a year. Some days are 100% national politics, some days are 100% local. But over the course of the year, it evens out. Yeah. It's a little of both.
Y'all been doing that 4.5 years.
Yeah, we have. We started July 14th of 2014. So Bastille Day.
I was one of y'all's first guests.
You were, we were talking about it before. I think you were either our first guest. I know you were on the first day. It was either you or Jim Ziegler. I can't remember which one of you came on first.
Does Jim come on regularly?
He used to. Hadn't in a while. Well, you know, when he was running for office. But he hadn't in a while.
He's laid low for a while.
Yeah, it's been, you know, once he wrapped up the primary, there's really no reason to ever do anything ever again. He's term limited out of his current position. Yeah. He's not going to win anything
He's
else.
older than I am, too. Jim Ziegler was in school with me at Alabama.
Was he ahead of you?
He was 3 years ahead of me. He beat the machine. I was a freshman and he was a senior, and I was in the machine, and one of my jobs was to campaign for the machine candidate for president as a freshman. New machine plebe.
So you campaigned against Jim Ziegler?
Yeah, Ziegler was the independent. He beat the machine. And my first job was to campaign for Tony Davis, who was a KA, who was running as a machine candidate.
I've never understood the machine and the not machine. Why does the machine care who the student body president is? I mean, it's a great position, and the people who get it go on to great things.
Well, it's kind of a training ground. Is really when I was a little boy growing up in Troy, I always knew I was going to be in politics, and so I actually, as a little boy, was an Auburn football fan. But I was about 12, 13 years old. I realized I was going to be in politics, so I became Alabama.
You were kidding me.
So I went to Alabama because of politics.
Right.
The irony is I had a next door neighbor who's a pharmacist in Troy, and about 2 years older than me, who was an Alabama fan. His daddy was an Auburn pharmacist. He was going to go to Auburn to be a pharmacist. And I was an Auburn fan and went to all the Auburn games. But I became Alabama. And we're both rabid fans now. We're all Troy fans. We're rabid Alabama and Auburn fans. But anyway, back to what I was saying. I went to university to be in politics. But when I was growing up, Baron, we had 9 congressmen, and all 9 of them had been groomed by the machine.
Really?
They had all come from towns like Troy, Greensboro, Rainsville, wherever, and they'd gone to Alabama, been in the machine, gone back home and practiced law for a couple of years, waiting for a congressional seat to come open, and they'd go to Congress at about 40 years old. But every one of them had come through the machine. Lister Hill hadn't done that.
So the machine is a training ground.
That's all it was.
But who cares? I mean, who?
Well,
organizes?
if you're going to be in campus politics, or you run the SGA, it's like running a government. You know, we had a budget. You know, I was in the student senate, so we got to pass a budget, and It's like it's just a training ground. I mean, it's not a gigantic budget. It's bigger than it used to be at Alabama now. The SGA budget. You get to pick people who are going be a cotillion and that sort of thing. So it was like it was an interesting thing. Lister Hill's part was president this year. Right. He started the machine.
Did he really?
In the 1930s,
that doesn't surprise me.
40s. He was, and John Spartan was a machine member.
How about that?
Yeah. So anyway, it was probably not so now though. People always allude to the machine. Some of these columnists want to do an expose on the machine, but our congressional delegation now. Let me give you an example. Brad DeBurn went to Duke.
Yeah.
Martha Roby went to New York University. Mike Rogers went to Jacksonville State. Adderholt went to Birmingham Southern. Mo Brooks went to Duke.
Yeah.
And Gary Palmer's only went to Alabama. He was not in the fraternity.
How about that?
So it's not like it used to be.
It's not like it was.
The only one living who is in politics now that was in the machine and the major Washington job is Shelby.
John Merrill.
Merrill was not in the machine. He beat the machine.
Oh, he also beat the machine.
He was like Ziegler.
Yeah, okay.
Merrill beat the machine.
How about that?
Anyway, we got off on that.
Yeah, we did. Sorry.
Anyway, that was old politics. We do this on your radio show. But I was going to ask you, tell me your big assessment, and then we'll get into the election this year. What did you take away from the election this year? It was so dull.
State election?
Yeah.
State election was as boring as could possibly be. But here's the takeaway. If you are a Montgomery or Alabama Republican, if you're an Alabama Republican, and there is any kind of statewide negative cloud around Democrats, you are going to win handsomely. It's no question, anything like that. If you're an Alabama Democrat, stop running. Don't run. Statewide, you're wasting your time. You're never going to get there. Maybe 20, 30 years from now it'll change. But for the next 2 or 3 election cycles, Democrats should hold their fire, stockpile their resources, and move on to brighter days in the future.
Barron, you are saying exactly what I've said in my column and what I've said after the election is that, and I'll even go back further than that. In my column this week, I rephrased what I wrote the week before, that the race was not really interesting because the race really was in the Republican primary. But going back to probably almost 7, 8 years ago now, as a youngster like in politics, I'd gone to Bowie State, and I've been 45 years, and Pete Johnson, who's the head of Bowie State, has been for 25 or 30 years, invited me to be the keynote speaker for the 75th anniversary of Bowie State to talk about Alabama politics, which I did and loved doing it. And I told those boys then, who were sitting there, young politicos, precisely what you just said. I said, when I was sitting here where y'all are 45 years ago, even if you thought you were a Republican, you had to run as a Democrat.
Right.
Now I'm telling you, as a political observer, you may think you're a Democrat. That's all well and good. In your heart, be a Democrat, but don't tell anybody. and be a Republican.
Right.
You got to run as a Republican.
Yeah. They don't have a chance. I mean,
exactly.
They got completely wiped off the map. I'll give you an example. I'll give you a specific example. Kay Ivey and Walt Maddox. That was the governor's race. Will Ainsworth and Will Boyd was the lieutenant governor's race. Will Boyd, the Democrat candidate for lieutenant governor, spent about $10,000 and got 38, 39%, whatever. Walt Maddox, the Democrat campaign, Democrat candidate for governor, spent millions and got about 1% more.
I know it.
And if you're going to spend millions of dollars and get 1%, it's a long way to close a 20-point gap.
It really is.
I mean, and everybody points to Doug Jones. They spent over $20 million to get him elected. They can't do that on every race.
No.
They can't do that on any statewide race, except maybe U.S. Senate under particular circumstances.
And that was a real unique situation.
Very unique situation.
It was the only race in town. So having said that, what I said, and I repeat myself out from the column, winning the Republican primary is tantamount to election.
100%. In Alabama in the statewide race.
Probably Tommy Battle was a better candidate than Walt Maddox was anyway. I mean, if you get right down to it.
Who you talking
in
about?
The Republican primary, if Walt Maddox had taken our advice or someone's advice, said, look, Walt, I know you know and think you're a Democrat.
Right.
That's all well and good. That's
but
cute.
Just run as a Republican.
You got to run as a Republican. I think Battle would have beaten Maddox.
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
I think Battle was a better candidate than Maddox was.
Yeah.
But this just underlined and reconfirmed everything you and I talk about this election did.
Yeah, it was a really boring election for that reason. Now, if there's nothing going on nationally, and we just focus on Alabama, then that's fine. But the statewide elections got all caught up in the caravan, what happened to Brett Kavanaugh and all that, and it really did play a role.
I was talking with, and I made that statement about when I spoke to a Mid-Alabama Republican Club in Birmingham recently, and Jim Carnes and all the legislators from Birmingham were there, and I said, I believe the Kavanaugh thing gave the Republican candidates a 5% bump. And Carnes, who was, I think, maybe in charge of some of the Republican races besides his, he raised his hand like that and says, no, it was 10.
Oh, probably.
It was 10 points.
Yeah, nationally.
In Alabama.
Oh, in Alabama?
It saved the guy up northwest Alabama.
Oh, Stutz?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it probably did. And it just filtered through. People got the impression when they showed up, we're not going to reward any Democrat at any level. School board, dog catcher, coroner, it didn't matter. They were not going to let a Democrat succeed.
Barry,
and they showed up and voted Republican.
You're exactly right. And I tell you what happened. This occurred really and truly, and I really, the first change, when we changed, we really changed.
Right.
In 1964, probably before you were born, was the first change. The Goldwater landslide. That's when the South had been Democratic for 60 years.
Right.
And we changed, we wiped out our entire congressional delegation that day, voting for Goldwater over Johnson. So Johnson laid the first stake in the heart of the Democratic Party with the Civil Rights Act in '64. Then the second defeat of the Democratic Party, and people look at this at the state level, was when the Charlie Graddick-Bill Baxter debacle in '86, when they got in a fight about the picking the candidates. That was, people point to that as being a change. That was incremental. It was the final thing, but so it broke the barrier for the state level. 2010, in my opinion, and I don't like to hear people say that Mike Hubbard orchestrated that change. It was Barack Obama.
It was Barack Obama, and it was a national change.
That's right. He wrote a book and said, we had this change, and I was talking to some young people in Birmingham recently, and they referred to that, and I said, listen, I know y'all think that Mike Hubbard orchestrated this thing with a genius stroke. They did feel good candidates. Let's give them credit for that.
There
was some good.
Nice guy, and I'm not going to name him, but a guy that was a state senator up from North Alabama. I don't think he knew what planet he was on half the time. There were candidates who really told me they actually didn't campaign. They were asked to sign up as Republicans in districts Republicans had never won. They put their name on the ballot fully and spent nothing, $2,500 or whatever to get on the ballot. Spent no other money, did no campaigning, and won by 10 points on election day.
Yeah.
That was a national thing. Mississippi went Republican for the first time. Tennessee went Republican for the first time. Tennessee went from a Democratic majority to a higher percentage of a Republican majority than Alabama had, and nobody was taking credit for it. They all recognized it came from Washington.
Yeah.
A lot of the wave elections at the statewide level, it wouldn't have mattered whether the Republicans in Alabama spent no money or millions of dollars.
I agree.
It was going to be the same outcome.
And at Tennessee, I'd never heard that example.
Yeah.
So they went from a Democratic majority
to like 70-something% Republican.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mississippi did the same thing.
Mississippi did the same thing. It's a wave election. I mean, it took, Barack Obama's first term, he wiped out about 1,000 legislative seats nationwide that were Democrat that went Republican. Those were solid Democrat seats.
Did not know that.
Yeah. It was just under 1,000, like 950 or something. Some ridiculously high number. And that's why when they were saying this guy was mailing pipe bombs to Obama, I said, no. We don't want to, no Republican wants to kill Obama. We got to keep this guy alive. Get him on life support. Get him out campaigning.
Or Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah, no, keep him campaigning.
Uh-huh.
I mean, the best thing, Pelosi, if she becomes the next speaker, that's the best thing that could happen to the Republicans.
Especially Trump.
Because right now, you know who raises the most money for Republicans? It's not Hillary Clinton. It's not Barack Obama. It's Nancy Pelosi. You put Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama's name on a fundraiser, you don't make that much money. You put Pelosi, you got to back up a Brinks truck to get the money out of there. It's significant.
Did not know that.
Oh, yeah, it's a big deal.
Well, that's the reason people run against her.
Yeah.
I wonder why she's such a lightning rod.
San Francisco liberal.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. She's an easy target.
Mm-hmm.
If they picked somebody from Kansas, Ohio, it'd be a lot harder.
Yeah, it would be.
It'd be a lot harder.
But but anyway, that's that. I don't see it changing. The one thing it was such a hard, tough straight ticket voting.
Yeah.
I think that's changed. I don't think you have that much straight ticket voting as you had this time.
Yeah, historically, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably not. Again, I think there was so much frustration with the way Trump's been treated among Republicans, and glee among Democrats, frankly. So much frustration with the way Kavanaugh was treated in particular. They went out there and said no Democrat benefits. I mean, your average Republican voter went out there and said, I'm not voting for a Democrat at any level for anything. I mean, I took that attitude in there, Steve, frankly. You know, I'm partisan. People know that. But in the past, I've historically split my ticket up a little bit if I see somebody on the other side that's a little better, I think. Not this year. There was nothing.
You just pulled the lever.
I did. I circled the Republican bullet. Actually, no. There was one race I was skipping. I'm not going to say it on there. There was one race I was going to skip, so I did individually bubble all of them except the one. But this year, I was not going to let a Democrat at any level benefit from their antics the last couple of years.
Let's go to the individuals in the Republican Party. You know, one thing that was asked about young Siegelman running in the Democratic side, I thought young Siegelman was a good candidate and did a good job. He's liberal, of course, like his father, especially by Alabama standards. But it made me aware, and I told the interviewer, I said, you know, really and truly, we don't have a farm system in this state. And you said that to me on your show because you know politics. We are fixing to be in a real bind in the U.S. Senate in the next 4 years. Richard Shelby will probably retire in 2002 after 4 more years after this 6-year term. He'll be 88 years old.
Yeah, 2022.
2022.
Yeah.
If you're going back, if he does, you have lost 36 years of seniority in the chairmanship of appropriations. You'll never regain that particular thing.
Right.
Nobody will probably do that again, maybe in history again. But having said that, you're going to have 2 freshman senators, the one that wins in 2020 and the one who wins in 2022.
Right.
And the worst part of it is, and the voters don't think about this, probably both of them be over 60 years old.
It's the worst thing Alabama could do, and it's not that I dislike elderly people or my seniors or anything like that, but you know this, Steve, because you've hung around national politics for a long time. In the United States Senate, absolutely everything revolves around seniority. And I'm not talking about age. I'm talking about days in the Senate, to the day in the Senate. The longer you've been there, the more power you have. Richard Shelby's chairman of appropriations, not because he's a nice guy. He is a nice guy, but that's not why he's chairman of appropriations. He's chairman of appropriations because he's been on the committee for 36 years. He's been the longest guy there on that committee, so you're automatically the chairman. Alabama will have a freshman senator, whatever Republican beats Doug Jones, 100% chance that Doug Jones loses in 2020. So that'll be a brand new senator. 2022, brand new Republican senator. If Alabama voters choose 2 people over the age of 60, it will set Alabama back 40 or 50 years in the United States Senate.
I've mentioned this with one.
And I hope they don't do it. I mean, I really do.
Well, we have no choice, probably because the problem is, look at the farm system.
Yeah.
There's one guy who is under 40 years old.
Will Ainsworth.
Will Ainsworth.
Martha Roby's only 43 or 4.
Well, that's right. She could do it.
And there's some state legislators, and there's some young people that are wealthy. And people don't like
That's
this.
the way to do it.
Well, the Senate is an aristocratic body.
Oh, no question.
And it's full of tens and hundred millionaires.
That's how they got there.
Yeah, and so don't.
That's the normal route.
That's the normal route. It's not to be a congressman and go, but it's to be a rich kid and go. Frankly.
Exactly.
Don't discount some of these young rich people in the state. And
that's a logical one.
And if you're a young rich person in elected office, you got a base, or at least people voted you in once.
That's right.
So that could happen. In an ideal world, Alabama would send 2 people up there under 45, and you know, Martha Roby and I have had our differences over the years, but I'd love to see her be the next United States Senator from Alabama for the simple reason that her age is right. And yeah, she's a little too establishment for me, but in the Senate, that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Well, and she's learning the system, too.
Yeah.
I mean, she knows how to work the system.
She'd be a perfect United States Senator. I think Will Ainsworth would be a great United States Senator.
I don't think he's interested in it.
I don't think he wants to leave Alabama.
I think he wants to be governor.
Well, I mean, but I don't think he has any interest in leaving Alabama with young kids.
No, he does not. And I think
and I respect that.
You know, speaking of I've got a column coming that's going to talk about the winners and losers, and I talk about, if you look at the individual winners, Ainsworth has to be a big winner because he's now catapulted himself from being a backbench one-term state representative from Sand Mountain to being lieutenant governor of Alabama. And that's a position you don't make any enemies in. because you don't do anything.
Right. Count to 18.
All you got to do is, count to 18 presiding, but not just that. You can make speeches, cut ribbons, get publicity, get to know people, and you don't make any enemies. And if you're dedicated to it, he can be in a good position. I tell you who I think was a winner, too, is our friend Twinkle Cavanaugh.
Yeah.
The way she handled that loss was probably, as much as I've followed politics over the years, it was the most genuine, class, gracious defeat I've ever seen. The smile on her face was just totally genuine. It was not forced.
Yeah.
And then she turns around and has a fundraiser in her home for Will Ainsworth.
Yeah, I was there that night, and I saw you there. I consider her a dear friend. So I'm not just saying this as an analyst, but as a friend. I think there was a sense of relief. It was over. The race got filthy.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, it was probably one of the dirtier races in the state, if not the dirtiest. And by the time it was over, I think there was a sense of relief. And she's a true party girl. She always has been. She's worked for the party. She really
is.
And she said, hey, he's the Republican. He won fair and square. The votes were counted. They preferred him. And she did. She invited a couple of hundred difference makers into her house and encouraged them to give cheerfully to Will Ainsworth, and they did. And I think she meant it. I think it was genuine and sincere.
I don't think she will try to go for the brass ring again, but I think that she probably will stay if she wants to stay, she can stay where she is the rest of her life.
I think she could stay at the PSC for a long time. She's got a good name. She's done a good job. The power company's done a great job, and the gas company's done. I mean, she's had a successful chairmanship or presidency over there.
Yeah.
It's not that. The question is, after you've been through the bruiser, do you want to put your name on the ballot again?
Not for a big. I mean, she probably can coast to PSC though.
She probably could, but even still, I mean, there's the there's the gun shy, there's the nervousness, there's the, and I've not talked to her about this, by the way. This is not. It's just me looking from the outside looking in. But I'm curious whether she would even want to do that again. Want to run for statewide office. But if she's done an excellent job. There's great order at the PSC, and it's because of her leadership. And she's cut expenses over there and cut the size of the office and cut the number of cars and vacation and all that. I think she would do well to stay there.
I think if you're looking at someone who is still fairly young and has a future, is John Merrill as Secretary of State.
Yeah.
He and Kay Ivey and Ainsworth were some of the top vote getters in the election, and he works so diligently. Some people think he overworks.
I'll be surprised, Steve, if he doesn't run in 2020.
For the Senate.
For the Senate against Doug
He's got a free
Jones.
shot.
Free shot. He's in elected office. He's term limited out. It's a chance to build yet again a statewide name ID, run, base. He is, and you said this, and I'm going to steal your line, he's the best retail politician in Alabama in decades.
He is.
He's everywhere. I mean, you can't turn around at a campaign event anywhere in the state, and I've been on campaigns in the state for years. You cannot turn around without running into John Merrill somewhere.
Well, I do this on holidays like Labor Day and the 4th of July, which are traditional political games where someone who really is a good politician used to go, just to find out how interesting, because I love old-timey politics. I will text him that morning and say, where are you going?
Yeah.
He'll be in Albertville at breakfast. He'll be in Fort Payne at lunch. He'll be in Mobile at dinner.
Yep.
I mean, he must put miles on that car, whatever car he drives. And so, but he does it religiously. He knows where to go. He knows to go to Mule Day. He does the old-timey stuff Wallace and them used to know how to do.
Yeah.
They had a calendar that you had to make must-do events.
And have you ever met anybody that doesn't like John Merrill? I have not.
He's a nice guy, and he's done it one-on-one.
Right. Yeah.
He's done it one-on-one.
He's won people over. I can't think of the last time anybody actually genuinely liked the Secretary of State just because they don't know who they are.
I know.
And if they know the name, they've never met him. Everybody likes John Merrill.
I talked to Jim Bennett, who was Secretary of State for a long time, probably the longest anybody in history. I said, Jim, people would not recognize you? He said, no, nobody knows who the Secretary of State is. He said, but he said one thing. He says, it's a tough job. You got quite a few employees over there. And you got 50 or so employees in the Secretary of State. So some of these jobs, like I mentioned earlier with Will Ainsworth, he ain't got to do anything.
No.
But Merrill's actually got to manage an office.
Right.
and you got 45 employees who want a day off, or their child's sick and the job ain't getting done or something. And
I'll give you one example. And John Merrill came into office at a time when, and I just know this as a lawyer, when business filings, you'd send your check and your business filing, and it might show up on the computer 3 months later, and your check might get cashed 100 days later. Well, when you're dealing with trust funds on behalf of your clients, you cannot be 1 penny off. Every penny has to be accounted for. You could lose your law license. So it was a dangerous situation for lawyers that were doing high volumes of this stuff. You'd get confused, you'd lose track of stuff. John Merrill came in and made the preposterously ridiculous statement that he was going to get business filings down to 1 day. And your check would be cashed the day they get it, or deposited the day they get it. And I laughed and thought, this young man, he has no idea how this world works. Within 6 months, you send a business filing in, it's on the computer that afternoon, and your check is deposited, it comes out of your account the next day. Mm-hmm. And I'm telling you, he is the most competent statewide official I've ever encountered.
And campaigns too.
Yeah.
But he's got a job to do.
Yeah.
But Bennett said that not only is it a tough job, you really got to manage people, but they think you're like overseas or something.
Yeah.
They think, well, what, don't you go to India? What do you get?
No.
Thanks for solving this peace problem.
I go to Arab, Alabama.
Barron, I hate to say this, but our time's already up. I'd like for you to come back, if you would, in a couple of months after the first of the year, and let's start seeing. I think people will start getting in that Senate race.
Oh, I guarantee it.
And we got a mayor's race here in Montgomery, too.
It's going to be a fun one.
That you'll have time to do on your radio show.
Yeah.
Folks, our guest tonight has been Barron Coleman. He is the radio personality of WACV. His show is live every day of the week, Monday through Friday, of 9 to 12, Barron Coleman. And it has a title, doesn't it, Barron?
News and Views, yeah.
News
Jack
and
Campbell,
Views. News
Barron
and
Coleman.
Views. Y'all listen for Barron and Jack on every day, 9 and 12. Thank y'all for watching. Hope you enjoy it. Hope you watch next week. Thank you very much. Thank you, Barron.
Steve, I appreciate it.
Thank you.